Hey guys, so tonight we're going to do a video about Napa versus Bordeaux. Or maybe not versus, maybe just a comparison. So I want the video to be less than 9 minutes long, so I don't want to get too sidetracked on growth wines and everything about Bordeaux because that's a 20-minute video, and same goes for Napa. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each wine and uh, talk about each region and give you an idea of how they differ. I'll say to start off with, both of these wines on the left bank of Bordeaux are prominently of Cabernet with some Merlot, Cab Franc, Petit Verdot, and that's when you hear the term Bordeaux blend. That's a Bordeaux blend. And in the beginning, Napa was really maybe trying to emulate Bordeaux in the way that they blend their wines, and the way their wines are bodied and the flavor profiles. Now I would say that Napa has its own personality, and the wines are different, and they're both great. It gives us something different to experience. They don't have to be versus each other. We get to enjoy both, and that's good. But they're different, and this is how they're different. So Napa wines are considered New World wines generally, and these are considered Old World wines. Lynch Bauge has been around since the 1700s. This is a fifth growth in the 1855 classification, and I will do a video all about the growth wines. That's a whole video. This is a fifth growth, but this is one of the better ones. This is one of the more expensive fifth growths. The first growth wines are over $1,000. A lot of the fifth growths are in the $60 to $90 range. This bottle is more expensive, but this bottle is fantastic. This is a fifth growth. So what we have in France, in Bordeaux, is temperatures that are a little bit lower. We have less sun and less temperature than a Napa, which produces wines that have a bit more acidity because you have cooler weather that facilitates a little bit more acidity. Acidity can provide lift in a wine and help it not feel flabby and kind of sticky. If you're not familiar with these terms, a wine that's considered flabby or fat, the tannins, the flavors, the body of the wine, the viscosity from alcohol can make the wine feel kind of heavy in your mouth, and acidity gives it a juiciness that people call fresh. And Bordeaux wines have a little bit more acidity. Acidity is always a concern in Napa because it gets very hot. And heat helps grapes ripen, and I'll get to why that's good for Napa wines. But a plus side of Bordeaux is they don't struggle with acidity. So their wines don't struggle with freshness and lift. Somebody might roast me in the comments for not using all these terms exactly correctly. I'm not a wine professional. But generally speaking, this region is cooler than this region. And they have heat index that measures those. I think it's called the GDD. This runs between 2,500 and 3,000, and in Napa it's 2,500, I think, to 3,500. So it's about 17% more sun and more heat. And we'll get into what that does. But Bordeaux's, generally speaking, Merlot grows better in Bordeaux than Cabernet. Cabernet likes hotter temperatures, Napa. But the soil, there's some rocky, gravelly soil, especially in Pauillac, and I really like Pauillac. In Pauillac, the soil looks more like rocks. And Cabernet likes that. Cabernet needs to struggle a little bit to bring out the minerality and the flavors. So Bordeaux wines, because it doesn't get as hot, the grapes don't get as ripe. Ripeness equals sugar, sugar equals alcohol. Most of these wines used to be 13, 13.5, now they're 14. In Napa, 15% alcohol is very common. You got a lot of ripeness and fruit forward wines. Fruitiness from the ripeness. This wine, less alcohol. The French, or we might consider this wine more restrained. It's not as extracted. The berries aren't the fruit is not as ripe. So there's less sugar and there's less alcohol, and the wines aren't as big. They're not as bold. They don't have the level of alcohol, which can add viscosity to a wine and make it heavy. So the wines are a little bit more fresh, and because the fruit forwardness is not hiding a lot of the minerality and the flavors from the soil, from the earth, these wines are a bit more savory, less fruit and you get more tobacco, wet earth, mushroom. You'll even hear like barnyard. Pauillac, not some of the different regions get a little barnyardy, and that's not really my get down. I like Pauillac. That's another video. But the Bordeaux wines are a bit more savory, less fruity, and I would say that they're more elegant. So, and they're kind of an acquired taste. When you first drink these wines, you actually might like Nappa better. But I would say to save your money, get a bottle. I feel like, and this is controversial, I feel like Bordeaux really shines when you spend a little bit more money. God forgive me for saying that, but I wouldn't judge Bordeaux until you get a bottle at least of this caliber. And this bottle runs about $180. But this wine is very well done. And if you drink a bottle of Bordeaux every week for about a month, you will start to crave those savory, kind of meaty iodine or iron. There's this kind of meaty component, kind of a earthy, mushroomy minerality component that's less sweet. Wines are dry. These aren't supposed to have sugar in them. They're both dry wines. But there's less, the fruit doesn't hide that minerality. So these wines focus on elegance, lift, freshness. They use a little bit of restraint when they're extracting the wine, as far as how much they extract. And the wines sometimes aren't as inky as Nappa. Okay. Hopefully I'm not forgetting anything. Let's move on to Nappa, because we're up in the 6-minute range here. So let's move on. Nappa. Okay. Nappa wines, in my opinion, more of them drink better younger. This wine particularly is from Realm Cellars, which is quickly becoming a cult wine, a very expensive wine. This was found at Total Wine for about $180. And the reason you can get this at Total Wine, I believe, is because they constructed this wine to be consumed young. And they allowed Total Wine to have it so you can get it, so you can learn about them. Realm's only been in business for about 20 years. Again, New World wine, different stories. Older story, people think that's romantic. But the guy who started Realm, I believe he was a retired nurse, and he made some garage wine. He got 100 points. Then he had a tough vintage. I think maybe he got a bank loan and he started Realm. Here we are, only 13, 14 years later, and it's a cult wine. He makes wonderful wine. I'll get into who his winemaker is and all that kind of stuff at a different time. But this wine is meant to be drank young. You can even scan this little tag in the back, which some more pricier wines have, and it'll tell you that, he says, you can cellar this wine, but why wait? That's what when you scan the tag, that's what it says. So in my opinion, and this wine is a prime example of that, that's why I'm using it. These wines, Nappa wines, in my opinion, if you really want to experience Bordeaux, you get a bottle like this and you drink a 2018 or a 2015, or better yet, a 2010 or a 2000. That's how you experience this wine. This wine was meant to be experienced now. I'm going to Nappa in a couple weeks, 2 weeks, for my birthday, and I'm going to drink this wine. It's, I believe, a 2021. Don't quote me on that. It's kind of dark in here. I can't even see. I think this is a 2021. But I'm going to enjoy this now, and it was meant to be enjoyed now. And I'll give you kind of the breakdown of Nappa. So Nappa, it's warmer. They leave their grapes on the vine a little bit longer, and it's hotter in Nappa. So these wines are riper. And what's that mean? That means that the fruit flavors in this wine are more forward. When you hear the term fruit forward, this wine is fruitier than this wine. And that's good. If you've been drinking this wine for a couple weeks, you might be burned out on savory, and you might want a wine that has more of those fruit flavors. If you drink either wine too much, I kind of tend to get burnt out on one or the other. So I've recently drank a couple bottles of Bordeaux. I'm kind of craving a Nappa now. I'm wanting the fruit forward. So like this wine, in the mid palate, the attack is when you first drink the wine, which is like the tannins and the feeling you get on your tongue when you first drink the wine. Mid palate refers to the real body and flavor and viscosity and texture of the wine hits. This wine, you've got more fertile soil here than here, which Cabernet actually likes barren, rocky soil. But the temperature is a bit cool for Cabernet. The soil in Napa Valley can be a bit rich for Cab, but the temperatures are probably better. But this comes from valley fruit and mountain fruit, I believe is what it said on the website. So you get that rich valley floor fruit and you get the mountain fruit. You get a combination of both, but you get more heat, more ripeness, and so you're going to get more of the fruity flavors and higher alcohol, which gives the wine kind of a thicker, more concentrated body to it. When you dump this wine out, it's a bit more inky than this wine. This is Poya, I feel. It's pretty concentrated. We'll get into that in another video. But this wine is going to be, when you hear the term inky, Nappa Cabernet tends to be darker, richer, more concentrated. I don't know if I'd use the term richer, but more concentrated. And the French would say they don't use enough for strength, that maybe they're overly extracted. And they also don't mind things like the wood, like the oak, having an effect on the wine. Like tonight I'm drinking this, which I did a video on, which I'll post later. Very dark, inky kind of wine, like almost purple, you can see. This is near Calistoga. It's actually Sonoma, but it's a $24 wine. And it's made in the style of Nappa. It's very fruit forward, very fruit forward. It's warm. This is very North Nappa into the bottom of Sonoma. Very rich, concentrated, like almost purple wine. So more heat, riper fruit, more alcohol, more concentrated, and they'll let the oak affect the wine. In other words, this wine has hints of vanilla, espresso, spice that's from the wood. The French, they like the fruit and the terroir. They like the earth to speak for itself, and they like those flavors in the wine, the savory minerality of the earth that the roots are in. In Napa, they like the fruit to speak. So they like to let the grapes get very ripe. You get like a bold, a lot of alcohol, a lot of viscosity in the wine, a very dark, concentrated wine style. And the fruit, it's not that this wine doesn't have minerality, it's that the fruit is a little bit overbearing and can maybe hide some of the minerality. But if you like the fruit flavors, that could be good. So that's the difference. Both wines are great. The beauty of it is winemaking keeps getting more advanced and better. We get to enjoy both wines. And you can develop a palate for both wines, and you can kind of switch back and forth. You can enjoy those fruit-forward wines that have more influence from the oak. Matter of fact, there's even a wine, which I'll do a video on, from Howell Mountain, and they use a certain yeast in their wine. There's what you'll hear, you'll hear a yogurt vibe, or creamy, wines that are creamy, or that they have like a creamy or almost a dairy component. It adds this kind of vanilla, I call it a yogurt vibe. And it's from the oak, and there's a certain yeast they use that can leave that kind of dairy essence. And some Napa wines leave that. They'll use that yeast even though it leaves that yogurt component. And they'll use all new oak, which leaves vanilla, espresso, chocolate, cinnamon. And they don't mind if the oak affects the wine. So when you taste this wine, and this is South Sonoma, but it's made in the style of Napa. It's very oaky, vanilla, creamy. The oak has affected the wine. And in Napa, we're cool with that. In Bordeaux, they want you to experience the terroir. They want you to experience the earth and the natural components of the wine without being overly concentrated and, in their opinion, too ripe. And so this is more elegant and nuanced. This, you get really ripe fruit. Some of the grapes are starting to kind of shrivel at that point, and you get this concentrated high sugar, which ends up being a dry wine with very, very low sugar, because wines are dry. These wines are dry. But you end up with a very concentrated, higher alcohol, fuller bodied wine. And in Napa, my point is basically you get fruit forward, you get a little bit higher alcohol content, and the wood is expressed more. And in America, in New World wines, we don't mind the wood. We like the vanilla and the cinnamon and the spice that comes out of the oak. We enjoy that. I'm an ex-bourbon drinker, and I like it. But you can get a little burned out from it. So anyway, the point of this video is both these wines are great. Drink both. Drink Bordeaux. Drink Napa. Most Bordeaux blends, a lot of Napa wines are a high percentage of Cabernet with Merlot, Cab Franc, or Petit Verdot. Some of them are single vineyard and they're pure Cabernet, and the bottle will tell you that. But a lot of them are in the style of Bordeaux, which is a blend. Both wines are good. This one is more elegant and savory. and expresses minerality. This one has more fruit and lets the oak express itself. I would encourage you to enjoy both. Now I'm going to go enjoy this wine, which is a very affordable wine at $24, and I'm going to post a video about it. Thanks for being with me, guys. I love talking about wine. I'm really just making this channel so that my family doesn't have to listen to me talk about wine all the time, because they don't care about wine. So a lot of this is just for me. It's not like I'm trying to make money or anything. And I just want people to be able to come on here and learn a little bit about wine. And maybe you can enjoy wine too. Maybe you can go down to Total Wine and you can pick out a bottle of Bordeaux and a bottle of Nappa, and you can check them out. On one of your weekends, you can check them out and compare them for yourself and see what I mean by minerality and fruit forward. Thanks for being with me, guys. Catch you later.